Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is Wednesday, April 23rd. Thank you for being here. Tonight's Wednesday, so that means we do the Wednesday wrap up of the infamous or famous Z-Man. We're doing tonight, the subject is women. There's a lot of stuff to talk. That's a broad category. But the girl boss, the empowered woman meme that we see, the trad wife phenomenon, feminism, we could go on and on. It's going to be a great show tonight, and I'm excited to do it. Tonight it's at 7 p.m. Central. And how we do the show on Wednesday nights, we will get all your super chats, rants, and power chats at the end of the show. So if you want to support it, please do so. Z-Man and I, we split the revenue 50-50. It's a way to keep the show going. It's kind of our signal. Do people like the show or not? So Z-Man's got a real job. He's busy. So if you like that sort of content, consider to support it. And the same with this show. If you like this type of content, I appreciate your feedback and questions and comments. And super chats on YouTube. We have super chats. Rumble has rants, power chats. That's a feature. This link below here. And if you prefer something like a power chat, you can do in the description. There's a stream element, and they have a tip feature. And again, for tonight, if you want to get your questions in before the show, just use power chat or stream elements. But once the show starts, you can always use super chats or rants. And also, I want to encourage people, if you haven't, sign up to my Substack. Last night, we had another good roundtable. We have that every Tuesday night. So if you get the chance, go ahead and sign up to that. And good morning, Timothy. It's good to see you. Here we go. And this is Substack. And every Friday, I do a video for my Substack people. So it's great to see you guys all here, and we will just get right into the news here. Today, the markets look like they've gone up a little bit. Bassett said there is an opportunity for big deal between the United States and China. And based on that, the market soared. The Dow Jones was up yesterday, and it's up today. Crypto, Bitcoin is up. I'm not really sure where Trump stands on this whole tariff bit. And that's, I guess, the criticism I have of him. Is this a negotiating thing he's doing with these countries to get a better deal? It kind of sounds like it, but in other times he's talked about tariffs going to be on for good. That way we can encourage industry to come back to the United States and for national security reasons, which I support, and potentially the revenue we get from tariffs from other countries, it could be used to lower our taxes or even eliminate the income tax. So Trump's kind of been all over the map on tariffs, and I'm not really quite sure where he stands. I suspect what is happening is he saw the bad market response to his tariffs and he got cold feet, so he's kind of pulling back a little bit. I like his idea of tariffs for the United States, but I think it's something that needs to be implemented over time instead of like all at once. Instead of like having a 200% tariff on China, maybe make it 10% this year, raise it another 10% next year. Have a roadmap. Meet with all the business people and say, hey, this is where we're going long term. And so that way businesses can plan, because right now businesses, I don't think, know what Trump's doing. Is he serious? Because you're not going to relocate all your production out of China if in a month Trump says, oh, I was just teasing. Yeah, there's not going to be tariffs. Then you got to go back to China because you need the low cost. Otherwise, your competitors will be there. So there's not been a lot of clarity of really what Trump wants to do with tariffs. Is this a thing he wants for good to bring back business to the United States, or is this just a negotiating ploy to try to get better deals, whatever that means? I don't I don't really know, and I don't think most people know. And part of the problem in America in general, with a democracy, it's hard to have a consistent policy because it could flip flop around every 4 years. You get a new administration and then they change it all again. So if you're a business, relocating your business to the United States, especially if you're a big manufacturing concern, let's say you make toys, well, that requires some time to build a factory in the United States, hire people. It's more expensive than China. And are you going to do that if in 4 years that's all going to be taken away? And the markets like tariffs, like there being no tariffs because you get cheaper labor overseas, which is good for companies because you can get better, you can have lower prices. That is true. But unfortunately, it just takes away jobs in America. And we've seen the result of free trade is this wiped out our industrial base, which is also a security risk. So I'm not quite sure where Trump wants to go on this. He says he wants tariffs. He says he wants to be like McKinley and bring jobs back to America. But then he seems to get very spooked if the market starts to move around at all. So we will have to see what happens there. And there could already be a pullback in the market because they were trying to clarify that, oh, Trump's not saying he's going to remove the tariffs. He's just open to lower the tariffs if China's willing to negotiate. So I don't know exactly what that means, and we'll have to see what happens there. So that's the tariff stuff today. We have some other things that Marco Rubio, and he's turned out to be fairly good. I wasn't a big fan of his initially, but Marco Rubio just announced sweeping cuts to the State Department, especially in bureau spending tax dollars to promote the LGBTQ agenda in conservative countries like Poland and Hungary. I can vouch for this. When I lived in Hungary or visited there, the State Department under Obama, their primary thing they were focused on was promoting homosexuality. They weren't about promoting free speech or liberty, anything like that. No, it was let's have gay pride parades. And this has dominated really our foreign policy, trying to push homosexuality across the world. I reject the notion that people are born homosexuals. We've seen a big increase of it now because it's pushed now on children. I think homosexuality is a deviation and is caused by a variety of factors. There could be somewhat of a genetic factor in some people, but there's no biological reason for that. I mean, there's a biological reason men are attracted to women and vice versa because that continues the species. Homosexuality is kind of up there like having sex with an animal or a corpse. There's no real reason for it. It used to be considered a mental illness. And then there's different types. You got to separate lesbianism from male homosexuality. Lesbians more tied into like the political. A lot of times women, they've been abused by men, so they go into lesbianism, even though there's not much sex involved. And male homosexuals, a lot of them, as Milo said, were molested as fairly young kids, like 12 to 14 years old, and it messes up their sexuality a little bit. But it's not exclusive because you see a lot of these so-called women that are lesbians. They've had relationships with men and maybe children, and so-called men homosexuals that have been with women. So they have a sexual attraction to the other sex. I don't think it's an intrinsic quality. It's a behavior. And I think that's a big mistake when we call this an intrinsic quality. And what do I mean by intrinsic quality? Like your race is intrinsic. You don't choose to be black or Asian or white. That's just how you are. And but I believe homosexuality, that's just a term we put on people that engage in sodomy, and that's a behavior. and that behavior can be increased or decreased based on various pressures by society. It's sort of, I use an example of calling someone a thief. Well, are you born a thief? Is that your intrinsic who you are? No, it describes a behavior. But there's been a big push to promote LGBTQ because the United States has primarily abandoned Christianity, at least the government or the woke people. In fact, a lot of the people that controlled our institutions are not Christians. And the LGBTQ agenda is a way to undermine the family, reduce birth rates. And there's a lot of reason behind that. So the State Department, unfortunately, that became one of our primary things, is to push that. And luckily, Rubio is cutting that. We shouldn't have been pushing that anyway. If anything, we should be opposed to that sort of thing. But instead, we promote it, and that's been very harmful. So that's Rubio. I give him a pass on that. And in that realm, let me just show you. They're talking about the new pope. And one of the issues is this guy. I'm not sure who he is. Cardinal Robert Sarah. And he's obviously a black guy, but he is opposed. He says gender ideology is a Luciferian refusal to receive a sexual nature from God. That is true. If in Christianity is very clear against homosexuality. It's a sin. It's not a choice. It's a sin. And so is cross-dressing. And you can't change your gender. God has made you how you are. And so I think this cardinal, what he's saying is correct. Now, I don't know his other positions. And obviously he's black. Typically popes, the vast majority of popes have not only, I think they've all been white, but mostly Italian. So the question is, and we talked about this in the roundtable, would it be okay for the Catholic Church to have a black pope? And I guess I surprised a lot of people. I'm yeah, sure, why not? It's because Christianity is not a ethnic religion. It's a universal religion. All people can become Christians. So it's not a racial-based religion. And I know that comes under a criticism by a lot of people that wish it were, but it isn't. And Christianity, in some ways, is one of the early religions that was not based on a people. Because historically, religion was always tied to a certain people. Judaism still is. Now, they have converts in Judaism, like Ivanka Trump, but it's really rare. And generally, it's something that you're born into. If your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. And even if you don't practice Judaism, so let's say you're a Buddhist, you're still a Jew. But the Jewish religion was Judaism. It's kind of intertwined. And you saw that even in the Bible, where the Jews had their God, Yahweh, and he was their God. It was sort of interesting because they talked about other gods, but he was like the head God. And that was typical back in ancient times, is people, they would have their own personal God based on, their population, their people. And Christianity was one of the early religions that changed that. It was universal. And that's why previously you wouldn't necessarily try to have missionaries or evangelize other people to your God, because your God was just for your people. And you really didn't care if other people had their gods. Rome was like that. They had all the, mythology of their gods. And they didn't really care if you had your own gods that you worship. They were fine with that. Where they had the problem with the early Christians is the early Christian says, no, there's not many gods. There's only one God, and it's through Jesus Christ. And the Romans are saying, we don't care if you have a God that's like Jesus and all that. We really don't care, but you can't say it's the only way, because that threatens our system and it create instability. So that's why they persecuted the early Christians and threw them to the lions and all that type of thing. It didn't work, but that's what they tried to do. So Christianity has always been a universal religion. So there's no reason there couldn't be a Chinese pope or a black pope or anything like that. There's more reason to have a black pope biblically than there would be to, for example, to have a female pope. You couldn't have a female pope because that violates Christianity, because the Apostle Paul, who we believe was inspired by the Holy Spirit, who is God, made it clear women shouldn't be in positions of authority in the church. I don't think they should be in the government either. And there's reasons for that I won't get into now. Maybe tonight we'll get into that. But so there shouldn't ever be a woman as a pope, or obviously someone that engages in homosexuality. Again, that's a behavior there. That's in willful disobedience to God. They shouldn't be obviously a pope. But if the pope's black, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And I'm not a Catholic though. So, I mean, this is up to the Catholics who they pick. I don't know if it really makes that big of a difference. I don't think the Pope really has that much influence like they had back in the Middle Ages. They used to have a lot more influence. Now, if people disagree with the Pope, even Catholics, they just disagree with the Pope and they do their own thing. I don't think it really changes much. So we'll see. We'll see what the Pope is, what he is picked. Will they have like a so-called progressive pope, or will they have more of a traditional pope? I think if the Catholic Church is reading the room, they'll get someone that's more traditional, because I think a lot of young people want the tradition. They don't like the liberalism that's been infecting the church. Because again, there's no point of the church if the church just acts like the world. What's the point of having the church? Right. That's part of the process of being a disciple of Christ, is you're not taking the easy road, you're taking the hard road, and you have discipline in your life. So you're not trying to be of the world, meaning, so the church isn't trying to do whatever the world does, meaning the world celebrates sodomy. The church is like, well, we don't care if you guys celebrate it or you find it popular, we oppose it because we stand on eternal truth. And we believe the truth is not up for debate. It is decided by God. And you may not believe that, but we believe that. So we don't go back and forth. And I think a lot of young people in general, all people, but a lot of young people really desire that. Because ironically, churches that have tried to become more open and inclusive, say like the Episcopalians or some of the Methodists or even some Catholics, there's not much interest, right? Why go to a church like the Episcopalians? You could just go to a gay bathhouse, right? It's the same thing. They don't believe in the Gospels. They don't believe in any sense of sin, except I guess they redefine sin. So like homosexuality is very clear in the Bible as a sin, but they go, oh, no, that's not a sin anymore. What's a sin is racism. I'm like, well, racism was never a sin in the Bible, but they put the modern ideology onto the religion. And that always, I think, creates problems there. All right, let's take a look what else is happening in the news today. And we have the Ukraine update. This is something I don't think there's really going to be a solution to this. It needs to be decided on the battlefield. I know Trump wanted to be seen as the peacemaker for his legacy. You know, he'd come in on day one and get a peace deal. Well, that didn't happen. And he's been working with Rubio and his staff to try to negotiate with the Russians and the Ukrainians. But they're at an impasse. There's no way you can really compromise on this, because Russia is saying they're never going to surrender Crimea. That's their territory. They had a referendum. The people voted to be part of Russia. They've historically had Ukraine. They're never going to give that up. And Zelensky says he'll never agree to peace without this a surrender of Crimea. I mean Crimea, not Ukraine, because Zelensky believes Crimea is part of Ukraine. So when you have this much, it's an irreconcilable difference. This is why we're having the war. There's no, I don't know how you get to a compromise, because Russia's clear they're not giving up their territories that they believe rightfully belong to Russia. And Ukraine, with the backing of Macron and Starmer. They're like, no, there's no way we're going to budge. Russia's got to give back every inch of land that we consider to be part of Ukraine. So how do you get a peace settlement with that? I don't really know. There just doesn't seem, it's just a waste of time. It's, and I know Trump is good at the art of the deal, but part of making a deal, the early stages, you have to really understand if the other party is willing to make a deal. And I brought this up, like Sasha owns some land and she doesn't really want to sell now. But so if you get a party of someone that doesn't really want to sell, unless you make an outrageous offer, there's nothing's going to happen here, right? So you got to see, is the other party willing to make a deal, have some sort of compromise, and otherwise, why waste your time? So, like example, let's say I love my house here, and someone offered me, well, would you sell your house for $100 million? I'm like, no way, not even for 100 million. It's a fake example because I would take 100 million for it. I would take $1 million for it. So, but that's an example. If you're just so adamant, there's just at that point you see there's no deal to be made. And a good salesman will understand that and not waste his time on something where there's no deal to be made. And I think if Trump is a good marketing guy, sales guy, negotiator, he needs to understand, and I think it's finally dawning on them that there is no deal to be made. And it's not because it's like, oh, it's just too complex, we can't understand it. That's not the case at all. It's pretty simple, the positions. We understand what Russia wants. We understand what Zelensky and Ukraine wants, and they're opposite. And no one's willing to compromise, and they're pretty adamant about that. So what's there to negotiate? There's really nothing to negotiate. And that's why you have a war. So the outcome is going to be decided on the battlefield. And currently, Russia controls Crimea, and they are almost have all the 4 provinces they want. And so that is probably going to really decide the issue. And as I said many times, I think Trump, the smart play is just to walk away from this. But walk away meaning no more aid to Ukraine or intelligence to say we're not part of this war. We're not going to help Russia, but we're not going to help Ukraine. This isn't our war. You guys are not willing to negotiate or find a peace. We have other more pressing issues in America than a war over the Donbass region. That's not really in our interest to worry about. I mean, from a humanitarian position, obviously we want peace, hate to see people die. But this idea that somehow if Russia gets eastern Ukraine, what Russia considers their territory, then Russia will be emboldened and invade Germany and France is just stupid. Because it's like, if I was like Trump, if I was president, I would say Russia, Ukraine's not our business. We don't really have a position here. We're willing to trade with you. We're going to remove sanctions. We're obviously not going to give you weapons or to help you with the war. And I'll tell Ukraine the same thing. I'm like, good luck. This isn't our battle, though. You're not part of NATO. This is a dispute over some territory. I won't go into the whole dispute. Both sides think they have a case for it. But there's every position is hardened, so there's no negotiation here possible at this time. So we're getting out of this. And now tell Russia, we don't think you're going to invade NATO. That's fear porn that Starmer, Macron are using to try to fool people like they did with COVID and other things and global warming, try to get people scared so they go along with their views. But it's not going to happen. They're not. Russia's not going to invade and take over a NATO country. And I would tell Russia, if you did, that's Article 5, then we would go to war. We have an agreement with NATO. Ukraine's not part of NATO. Germany is. And I think Putin be like, yeah, we have no intention in invading NATO. So that'd be it. I would walk away from this mess. We don't have the money from it. Eventually, Russia, in a sense, they will win. They're winning right now, the eastern provinces. They just have more men and more capabilities than Ukraine does. And again, it's not a matter of sending more and more weapons to Ukraine. They're just running out of men. And that's a problem. And unless we want to send our troops there, which we don't, there's nothing really that can be done about it. So Russia will get the eastern province. I don't think Russia wants to conquer all of Ukraine. So they'll get what they can, maybe everything east of the Dnieper River, maybe Odessa. And then they'll just, then they'll fortify it and they'll say, this is ours. They'll protect it. There's not much Ukraine can do about it. And then it will just kind of, once Russia stops advancing and they start to defend what they have, and then, eventually it will just fizzle out. I think that's probably a likely scenario. And people forget about it. There'll be other crises going on. So I don't see this as a huge issue to go forward with that. So, yeah, there we are now. Let's see here. I got a tip. Thank you. This is on Stream Elements has a tip feature that's very similar to what Powerchat has, if you prefer Stream Elements for whatever reason. This is Hamster Breath. Hey, Hamster Breath, haven't seen you for a while. It's great to see you. Dear Americans, please liberate us. We're being replaced by subcontinental people, sincerely Canadians. Even the stupid ones that still have no idea what's happening. Yeah, it's a sad situation in Canada, but all of Western countries, there's been a goal. It's not a conspiracy theory that they want to eliminate all white countries, make sure they're not white anymore, majority white. And groups like the ADL and SPLC, they do that because they consider white countries, white people to be a threat to them. And so they're against nationalism, except for their people in Israel. They're opposed to nationalism or self-determination for our people. So they have this ongoing plan they've been working for years on of importing all these people and doing a lot of policies to reduce the white birth rate. It's been planned. So it's just not Canada. I don't. Eventually, we'll have to have a more tribal sense that we have a right to exist just like other people do. Until we get to that point, I don't know what's going to happen. And Hamster Breath, I see I feel sorry for Canadians. I really love a lot of Canadians. They're great people. They're like our cousins, and I'm friends with a lot. A lot of them watch my show. But sadly, it looks like the Canadians are going to vote for the Liberal government again, which will put them, into more socialism, more poverty, import more Indians and Muslims, and more tyranny in Canada. It's going to be a very dark and cold place up there. It's really sad what's happening to Canada. But people, they tend to vote for this, and I don't know what to do. Can you save people against themselves? It's tough. And I get it. A lot of these people, they've been victims of propaganda since birth. And this is part of the problem we had with cultural Marxism is cultural Marxism, unlike economic Marxism or revolutionary Marxism, wasn't about trying to overthrow a country and put in communism. It was like, what we need to do is gain control of the cultural institutions, meaning like the Hollywood media, the news media, movies, radio, entertainment, and have a consistent message in order to influence people so we can change the voting patterns. Because if we control those institutions, we can run the propaganda on the people. And it's been pretty effective. It's very effective against women because women are very conformist. This is why women, they do what everyone else does, that they're into fashion. And if all of a sudden it becomes fashionable to get a tattoo, all the women get a tattoos because, they just follow the herd. And this is why women tend to be the biggest enforcers of whatever the social norms are. And who defines the social norms? Well, it used to be the church and the family. But again, the cultural institutions, we've allowed the enemy to capture them. and they've been able to run propaganda against people their whole lives, so they don't know anything. They just know that it's evil to be white and we need to celebrate everything else. And to be a good person, we have to eliminate whiteness, even though it just leads to a horrible situation. It's a long process. And I think before you can have any political change, we need to change the culture and reclaim back a lot of these cultural institutions. And how you do that? Well, technology's been a big part of it. I mean, that's why a lot of these groups have hated the internet so much. They've lost a lot of their monopoly power, and that's why they always kvetch about it. And they responded by trying to do censorship and hide people with the algorithm and all that. And, they pretty much got rid of Stefan Molyneux. So they've been very effective with it. There's no doubt about it. But I think they feel like they're playing whack-a-mole. They keep trying to shut down ideas, but these ideas keep popping up. 4chan went down. That was a huge thing. But, these ideas are already out there and something else will come up. And I think and now since we have AI, you're going to see people starting to create their own like television or movies, and it won't be all that woke shit. So I think there's a lot of white pills from that. But before we can save people, they have to understand that they're worthy to be saved, right? So that is, I think, the tricky part that we're having to fight right now with people, not just Canadians, but a lot of people in general. It's tough. I understand that. All right, let's see here what else we got here. But thank you for the tip. And if you guys have a rant or super chat, I'd love to have them. We have a lot of difficulties ahead, including Trump. And I've done some short videos about this. And here's an example right here. Just in, federal judge Royce Lamberth issues an order that Trump administration must restore Voice of America, state-funded media outlet, and rehire the employees. And Voice of America, they're a shit-lib organization that's funded by your tax dollars. And this corrupt judge demands that, no, it doesn't matter you voted for Trump. We got to keep these propaganda organizations that take your tax money. They got to be restored. I encourage Trump to ignore this. I think we're at a crisis here with the judges. These judges are not priests, they're political. And if we're going to save the nation, we can't just do what the judges say. Otherwise, there's no way we can save America. So, and all these people are talking, but the rule of law. Okay, so which do you want? I look at it this way. You want the so-called rule of law and lose your nation. Your nation's destroyed. There's no coming back from it. Or do you want to save your nation and to hell with the so-called rule of law? I would rather save my nation, because this is what happened on the microcosm with California. Before, California used to be a red state, or a lot of Republicans. Nixon came from California, Reagan, and they started out of a flow of illegal Mexicans in. And I think it was Prop 187 they passed, the people, democracy. We don't want to pay welfare to these illegals. Let's get them out. And some judge overturned it. And because of that, it destroyed California. People moved out of California, went to Colorado, ruined that state. Mexicans poured into California and they took control of the state. It's now a solid blue state. And you see what's happened there. And that will happen throughout the rest of the country. And it wasn't because the people of California voted for that. Some stupid judge decided to destroy the state against the will of the people. And we have no obligation to follow these judges whatsoever. They're political as anyone else. And if people don't like what Trump does, I don't think Trump should follow these judges. He needs to press on what's good for the nation. And if they want to remove Trump, there's a way. The Congress, they can impeach him and put him on trial. And it's difficult to do. You got to get 2/3 of the Senate. But this is key, and we need to get rid of this. So, yeah, this is pretty bad. All right, let's look at J.D. Vance talking about stuff. I'm really happy with J.D. Vance, some of the stuff he's done. So let's take a look here. And guys, thank you so much for being here. Remember, tonight we have Z-Man, the Wednesday wrap-up. That'd be a lot of fun. Let's listen to Z-Man. Let's listen to J.D. Vance's remarks here.
Contrast with too many in the West, where some in our leadership class seem stricken by self-doubt and even fear of the future. To them, humanity is always one bad decision away from catastrophe.
Yeah, and I was raised this way. If you guys are older, you remember there was, oh, the world's going to end any moment because of nuclear warfare. And then that went away. And in the 70s, oh no, it's getting too cold. The ice age is returning. There's always something. Pollution. Or in the 70s, overpopulation is going to destroy the earth. There's going to be mass starvation. That was a big one. We're having too many babies. I know that sounds funny now based on the demographics, but that was what was pushed back in the 70s. So there's always this fear mongering. And the people that push this fear mongering many times are grifters because they're doing it just to get money off you. Politicians like to create fear because they can control you. They did this during COVID. They try to do this with the so-called climate change bullshit, which is just a rebranding of what they previously called global warming. They changed that to climate change because in many instances it's actually colder in places, and their predictions have been 100% false. They make all these doom predictions like Al Gore, and they're false. They're like the people that are always predicting, religious people, the rapture, Jesus coming back by the year 2000 or whatever, and it never happens. So they're false prophets, but people still, I think I should discredit them, right? If you keep making predictions and you're always wrong, then obviously, why should you follow someone like that? But they like to do that because it's a way to control people.
The world will soon end, they tell us, because we're burning too much fuel or making too many things or having too many children. And so rather than invest in the future, they too often retreat from it. Some of them pass laws that force their nations to use less power. They cancel nuclear and other energy generation facilities, even as their choices, the choices of these leaders, lead to more dependence on foreign adversaries. Meanwhile, their message to their friends, to countries like India, is to tell them that they're not allowed to grow. Well, President Trump rejects these failed ideas. He wants America to grow. He wants India to grow. And he wants to build the future with our partners all over the country.
Yeah, so they got kind of a real dystopian view, the left, about, climate change and how we have to live all poor and everything. So I'm glad we're seeing a rejection of that. It doesn't seem like it's as popular anymore. Greta Thunberg, she moved on to the Palestinian issue, and it seems like the whole climate change thing is going the way of COVID, as being seen as primarily a hoax. And I think this is a good way to go. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be concerned about the environment, including India. They just dump shit in the oceans. We need to stop that and put tariffs on India, at least until they clean up. Same with China. But I'm pro environment, but we got to look at this in a realistic point of view. And if you believe in climate change, nuclear power is clean. And I don't know why people would be opposed to it. They're still opposed to it because of some stupid Hollywood movie, The China Syndrome with Jane Fonda, and because some batshit, dumb shit liberal actress thought it was scary. It stymies our whole energy development for the country. It's really bizarre. But hopefully we'll get beyond a lot of this. All right. And then we have this news today. Let's see here, this lady. Breaking. Democrat Representative Maxine Dexter says she will not leave El Salvador until Kilmar Abrego Garcia returns to the United States. He's a illegal immigrant from El Salvador that was a MS-13 gang member. And she's not going to leave El Salvador until he returns to the United States. I think other Democrats should follow her example. As I said, I encourage all Democrats to follow her example. They should all go there and stay there until he returns, and we should never bring him back. I like that. So, yeah, it's been really strange. Have the Democrats have latched onto him? But he doesn't belong in this country. He needs to get the hell out, and he is out, and so that's better for the country. And I think that is it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Let's see here. We'll take a look at let's take a look at a Tucker clip concerning Iran and the pressure of the neocon lobby for us to go to war with Iran. So let's take a look at this here.
Enormous pressure to go to war with a country that's not Iraq, that's actually more powerful than Iraq. But to the extent you can kind of characterize it using publicly available information, what is the current strength of Iran, do you think, as a military power?
I haven't heard this. Okay, but I'll just give you my view. Iran, they are pretty strong when it comes to missile defenses, and they're pretty advanced with drone technology. They're not as backwards, because we always think of these Arab countries as being backwards, like Afghanistan and Iraq. But again, Iran, they're not really Arab. They're Persian. They're Muslim, but they're not. They're ethnically a different group of people. They tend to be a little bit smarter. So it won't necessarily be as easy to fight Iran. And yeah, we could throw Tomahawk missiles there, but they will shoot a lot down. And then what will it accomplish? Nothing really, unless we send troops in to invade, and that would be a huge problem.
They still retain significant conventional military capabilities, a effective missile force. They have effective proxies in Iraq. They have a very effective drone program. And those things, I think the Iranian missile force, more than even a potential nuclear program, and this is based on their experience in the Iran-Iraq war, they very much view their missile force as their ultimate guarantor of regime and national survival.
They got pretty good missiles. They got hypersonic missiles, which I don't even think we have. They're very difficult to shoot down. And so the part of the issue is that could be a threat to our fleet if there was a war.
And again, that goes back to their experience in the Iran-Iraq war. And so that is a big reason why they have invested so heavily in developing missiles, drones, cruise missiles, and things like that that can strike all across the region. And that is really the real threat.
It sounds to me like people who've thought a lot about this have reached the conclusion that if we were to participate in a strike on their nuclear facilities, lots of Americans would die.
There's a real potential to that. Again, you can't, there's a saying in the military that no plan survives the first contact. And it's largely true that no assumptions survive the first contact, but right. It's still a significant risk that could happen. And I think it's fair to say is that is weighing in the calculus of a lot of people in the administration. A war with Iran risks being incredibly costly in terms of lives and dollars and instability in the Middle East.
Lives and dollars, American lives, American dollars.
The lives of Americans, the lives of Iraqis, of Saudis, of Bahrainians, of
Israelis,
Emiratis, yes, of Israelis, and of course Iranians. It could be an incredibly costly war, and I think that is very obvious to anybody who's been watching the region for a while. And I think that's why over the last few years you have seen certain countries in the region change some of their positions on how they want to engage Iran. They also recognize that a war for them would be extremely costly. And so they're trying to adopt a different posture. And that's a recognition on their end of the costs that a potential full-out war with Iran could have. And I think the president, vice president, they know this. And that is why they are making sure they're prioritizing diplomacy.
I saw a graphic that...
Yeah, I think one of the great things we have is J.D. Vance. I've noticed, unlike Mike Pence, J.D. Vance is really engaged in this administration. Mostly vice presidents, they don't really do anything. They don't really have much of a function except to cast a tiebreaker vote in the Senate. But Vance is really, traveling a lot. He's speaking to a lot of people. And I think he's giving Trump a lot of advice. And one of the reasons I was so happy about the J.D. Vance selection, I remember some of our people didn't like him. Oh, he wears eye makeup or something. Yeah. We'll just leave that. I'll just leave that segment alone. But J.D. Vance is very much in our sphere of how he thinks. I know he wasn't always that way, but he's made his journey. And J.D. Vance is not a neocon. He understands, I think, the power of the Israeli lobby. I don't think J.D. Vance is a fan of it. And he doesn't want a war with Iran. He understands the cost behind it. So J.D. Vance has been a really good balance to Trump to keep him away from a lot of the neocons that want perpetual war for Israel, because Israel wants a strike on Iran. And as I said, it looks like there's a lot of elements in the administration are like, no, let's get a deal with Iran. If they agree not to develop nuclear weapons, we can live in peace with them. But that's not what Israel wants. Israel wants them toppled. So that's why, and Pete Hegseth has been in the camp of let's not go to war with Iran. And that's why a lot of the neocons have turned on Pete Hegseth, and they will turn on Trump too.
The other day that showed the number of U.S. military installations in that region around the Persian or Arabian Gulf. And I don't know if it was a complete list, but there are a lot. And there's publicly available information. There are a lot of American service personnel stationed in that region in different places. And some of the places, there aren't that many. They're not massive, well-defended bases. They seem like small bases, including in Iraq and Syria, but others. I mean, why wouldn't those people be at risk?
It's not even just the service members.
And
then, that is, again, that is something that, as you point out very well, is often overlooked in any discussion around military action.
It's not even mentioned. It's not even mentioned. The threat to American lives.
Yeah. Basically, if we did bomb Iran, I don't think a whole lot would happen. I don't think it'd be World War III. Although the usual suspects like Alex Jones, World War III, he's always saying that, right? Oh, by the way, every time something happens, they're always screaming about World War III, and it never really happens. But I don't think that would happen. It would just be some bombing, some cool photos, and then nothing really much would change. So, yeah, I do think that's part of the issue there. So, all right, let's see what else here we got here. We talked about Iran, and this is Pete Hegseth talking about the Houthis. So let's just take a look at this, because the Houthis, they get a lot of their drones from Iran.
Clear, limited mission executed with ruthlessness.
Okay, he's saying a clear, limited mission executed with ruthlessness on the Houthis. Well, if it's limited, though, it's not. Is it going to be effective? So it may be a clear message. We want to kill Houthis, and they are ruthless. It looks like they blew up a lot of the United States, like tribal members at a tribal meeting. I don't really care. So they are ruthless. But what is interesting, because what he didn't say here, did he say anything about being effective?
This is a clear, limited mission executed with ruthlessness.
That's nice, but is it effective? And the answer to that has been no.
Full stop. We will run our ships through that BAM. And our message to the Houthis has been clear from the beginning. Allow us to sail our, and we'll stop shooting at you. Until then, you're going to feel the pain. And I'll tell you, the Houthis are feeling the pain.
Well, the problem with this is, yeah, we can send our battleships or warships through the Red Sea. They're not at serious risk of the small drones. The small drones that the Houthis have, they're not going to sink an aircraft carrier, although they could do some damage. But So our warships can get through the Red Sea, and the Houthis can't do anything about it. Although they can deplete our missiles, because when they send drones, we send expensive missiles to shoot them down. The problem is the cargo ships that go through, and cargo ships, they can't get insurance to go through the Red Sea if they're going to be attacked by drones. And so what do? And the reason the Houthis again are attacking our cargo ships is because they say we're supporting Israel's genocide in the Gaza. This is how it's all tied together. And I don't know if the Houthis right now are winning. They have still stopped the cargo ships from going through the Red Sea. And that's just the fact. So the United States has not been very effective. Yeah, we drop bombs, but again, there's limits to bombing. I'm not against bombing, but it's got to be part of a bigger strategy. You just can't drop bombs because, again, these people in general, they don't just stand around in the open to be bombed. You know, they're hidden, and then they attack with drones on shipping, and ships are scared to go through. And so it's been a very failed policy on the Houthis. Again, this whole policy is because we support Israel, and we shouldn't be supporting Israel especially in Gaza, what they're doing. Not that I care about people in Gaza, I don't, but we shouldn't be involved with that. Israel's rich enough; they can have their own wars. They don't need the United States involved with the war. So, I mean, we could be, beat our chest and drop bombs and kill people running around with sandals. Have fun with that, I guess, but it really doesn't change the calculus. Just like bombing Iran wouldn't change anything. They would still continue with their nuclear programs because a lot of the sensitive stuff they're doing, by the way, is underground anyway. I mean, they're not stupid. They're not going to put it out in the open where it could be bombed. And yeah, we can bomb some of their infrastructure, and that will annoy Iran, I guess, but it won't really change everything. So, yeah, that's where we are right now, and it's pretty crazy here. Let's see here. What else is up? We talked about making more babies, a demographic crisis. I don't know if Elon Musk has got into Trump's ear, but Trump is proposes a $5,000 baby bonus to boost U.S. population. A $5,000 baby bonus to every new mom after delivery. Well, I don't know the details, but to give it to every new mom would be a huge problem. I do not want some ghetto mom with multiple baby daddies pumping out babies that we're having to give welfare to until the kid grows old enough till he starts robbing stores and stabbing people, and then we have to pay for him in prison. That's not the solution. The solution isn't necessarily more people, it's what type of people are we going to have. So if you're going to do such a proposal, you need to do the minimum of what like Hungary did, which is under Orban, that to qualify for this, you should have to be married. So I would give nothing to a woman that's not married that has a baby. She shouldn't qualify for a baby bonus, number one. And we already, in a sense, give a bonus because you get a deduction on your taxes, right? A dependent. So I'm not really quite sure what this is. And the baby bonus thing, it doesn't really solve the issue. And we know this because countries have tried to pay women to have children. It still doesn't work. Mostly the problem of low fertility is because women go to university and they go into the workplace. And when they're at university between, let's say, the ages of 18 and 21, which was traditionally a prime time for women to have babies and get married, they're not doing that. They're going to university to get their degree. Then after they get their degree, they go into the corporate world and get their email job. Then when they have their email job, they want to travel the world and party. And, you don't want a baby right away. A lot of them aren't even married at that point. So in their kind of life plan, maybe when they're 30, they decide maybe they want to settle down and find a man to marry. And then that can be a difficult thing because they're no longer as young as they once were, and they don't have the options that they once had. But they still try to find a guy to marry. But then when they get married, it's like, when do they have a children? And, oh, well, we got to get our lives situated. First we need to get a house, and everyone's busy working. So the point is, by the time women start to try to have a baby, they're in their mid 30s. And then a lot of women discover, which is always a surprise to women, that it's more difficult when women are older to get pregnant. And for some reason, women don't understand that. I don't know why they don't understand that. They always have an antidote. Well, I knew someone that was 40 and got pregnant. Yeah, it happens, but it's easier to get pregnant at 20 than 40. But most women, for whatever reason, can't understand that. So then they have fertility problems at 35. Maybe they have a kid, maybe, right? And then there's the chance the kid's going to have issues, because when you have babies later in life, it's more risky for the mother and for the child. Don't blame me. That's just biology. Blame God or blame evolution. That's just how it is. Young women are meant to have children. That's how it's set up. But young women now, they don't want to have children. They want to get an education. They want to get their job. They want to do these other things first, which, okay, I get it. But a $5,000 baby bonus isn't really going to do a whole lot to change that. And we know that, because where it's ever been tried, it doesn't really move the needle very much at all. Even Hungary, they've done a very aggressive policies, much more than the 5,000. In fact, they were talking, after your third child, you'll never have to pay income taxes again. They've been doing a lot of things, and it's helped a little, but very little. It's not really moved the needle a lot. And other countries are having the same issue. So I don't really think this gets at the root cause. The root cause is when women get educated in the workforce, they tend not to have many children because they don't want to. That's the root cause. And that's a difficult one. People don't want to deal with, but that's just reality. And I'm not saying what the solution should be. Maybe it's just your society eventually dies and gets replaced by people that don't do that. But that's, South Korea's in that boat. They may just cease to exist. And maybe that's the way it goes. I'm not really sure. So, but I don't think a 5,000 boost is really going to make a big difference. That's for sure. So I think we're about wrapped up. It's been an hour, and thank you guys all for being here. I do appreciate it. Remember, tonight we have the show with Z-Man, the Wednesday wrap up, and be sure to be there and send in your power chats and stream elements. Here's a link here. Before the show, and we will get to your questions if you appreciate the show. I really do appreciate that. And that's at 7 p.m. tonight. And I look forward to that. I'm going to set up the show right after the show and put it out, and we'll have a good time. And I'll have the show tomorrow at the same time. So thank you guys for being here, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.